So we'll be seeing a summary of whatever we have seen before. So I thought it will enhance the clarity in a better way. So yes, we have seen the characteristics. For solving any PDE, we used something known as characteristics and then we proceeded with solving the PDE. So the main purpose of the characteristics is to help us in solving a PDE, and characteristics are some curves or surfaces along which it's possible for you to get an ODE instead of the full PDE. So how are we exactly doing it? So first let's just is the screen visible? Are the letters visible properly?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So on the left side we have a TX plane. So here we have written a PDE as well, which is dou u by dou t plus dou phi by dou x equals 0. So u is your conserved variable and phi is the flux. So t and x are independent variables. So u is a function of both x and t, and u is our dependent variable. Whereas when you draw a characteristic on this xt plane, I have drawn many characteristics on the xt plane here. So along a single characteristic, you can always have an equation for a characteristic. For any curve on the xt plane, you can always have an equation. So now a curve becomes one dimensional because your x can be written as a function of t, or t can be written as a function of x, either way. So when you draw some curve, you get an equation for that, and one variable becomes dependent on the other variable. So only one variable remains as an independent variable, whereas on the plane both t and x are independent and u was a function of both x and t. Here when you go to a curve, your x is a function of t and only t is the independent variable and x is a dependent variable. X is dependent on t now. So that way you get only one independent variable. So two in the plane you had two independent variables that turned out into one independent variable along the characteristic. So this helps us in writing the PDE as an ODE just along the characteristic. So along the characteristic, you just have one independent variable and you are able to write the PDE as an ODE. So that is what is the basic idea here. But you cannot randomly draw some curve. You have to draw some curve along which it's possible for you to get a PDE, get an ODE. So we'll be seeing that. We have seen this, but this is just some way of summarizing. So now, yes, I have written the PDE here, which is dou u by dou t plus dou phi by dou x equals 0. And u is the conserved variable. So anything which is, any variable which is written as a time derivative, which is written inside a time derivative, becomes the conserved variable. And any variable which is written inside the spatial derivative becomes the flux in that spatial direction. So we have seen the derivation of conservation law before. So based on that, so anything which is inside the time derivative becomes the conserved variable, and anything which is inside the spatial derivative becomes flux. So your phi is the flux, and you're writing that as dou phi by dou u into dou u by dou x. So u is a function of both x and t, so it's possible for us to write the PDE as this equation. Now what happens when you just look at a single characteristic? So along the characteristic, you know that x is a function of time. So your u of x comma t here becomes u of x of t comma t. Okay, so since x is also a function of t, you can write u as just a function of t alone. So that's what I've written green and red separately. So now taking derivative. So on the right side, you can just take an ordinary derivative, which is du by dt. We call it as the total derivative also. So this is the ordinary derivative, and on the left we have differentiated this u of x of t comma t. So that becomes dou u by dou x dx by dt plus dou u by dou t. So along the characteristic you have this equation, and your given PDE is this. So based on the idea that along a characteristic you have just one independent variable, we are able to write another differential equation, which is 2. So now we can compare this 1 and 2. So for anywhere when you just want to say, talk about characteristics, you can always write some differential equation on the characteristic itself. Like based on the idea that x is a function of t, you are writing another differential equation, and then you're comparing this 1 and 2 to just see. So the 1 and 2 are exactly same except for uh, two things, right? Dou phi by dou u and dx by dt. Then here we have equals 0 on the right hand side, and we have equals du by dt on the right hand side. So comparing this 1 and 2, 1 will be equal to 2 if du by dt equals 0 along dx by dt equals dou phi by dou u. So we have some equation. This du by dt equals 0 is the ODE for u along the characteristic, and dx by dt equals dou phi by dou u is your equation of characteristic. So from this you derive, you write, if you are able to solve this equation, you can find the equation of the characteristic, and if you are able to solve this ODE, you can find the solution for u along the characteristic alone. So this is the basic idea which we use to solve scalar conservation laws. That is, for the scalar conservation laws, we converted the PDE into some ODE along the characteristic alone. So yes, even if you have some source term here, your du by dt will be equal to, the ODE will become du by dt equals some source term along the characteristic. And then you again have a ODE, you need to solve that ODE along the characteristic. So this is it. So now going to 2D scalar conservation laws. We have not seen this before, but this is just some extension of 1D scalar conservation laws. There's nothing extra in this. So here, this is your PDE. Dou u by dou t plus dou f by dou x plus dou g by dou y equals some constant. Like I have written some source term here. It need not be constant also. It's just some source term. It can also be a function of x and y and t. So C, I have just written it as C. And here again, dou f by dou x can be written as dou f by dou u into dou u by dou x. The same goes with, this is dou g by dou u. And use a for the PDE, use a function of all three variables x, y, and t. Here you have three independent variables and one dependent variable. And along the character, if you are able to find some characteristic, now the same way, for one-dimensional case, we found we told x is a function of t. Here, both x and y are functions of t, and you can write u as u of x of t comma y of t comma t, and then since x and y are themselves functions of t, you can write this as just u of t itself. So you will have du by dt equals this, dou u by dou x. Now you have got a new differential equation just along the characteristic. Now you can compare your PDE with the differential equation that you obtained along the characteristic. That is, you're comparing 1 and 2. So, is this visible? Okay. So you're comparing 1 and 2. That now you will get 1 equals 2 when dou u by dou t equals c along dou f by dou u equals dx by dt and dou g by dou u equals dy by dt. So with these two equations you can find the equation of the characteristics, and this becomes your ODE along the characteristic, that is du by dt equals c. So the PD, the big PD which you had before has now been reduced into an ODE along the characteristic. So with the help of this you can solve your system of equations. So this is just along, this is an equation of, well, if you look at 1D, with the help of this you can find you can find an equation of the characteristic. For solving this you will require some x of 0 equals some x naught, right? Because this is an ODE in dx. ODE say it's in dx by dt. So to solve for x you need some initial condition, x at t equals 0 equals some x naught. So that way when you put the initial condition you are just identifying one characteristic. So here in this picture I've put different points over here. There are different points, right? So each of them corresponds to a different x naught. So depending on the so this is a general equation for a characteristic, and when you substitute some initial condition, say x of 0 equals some specific x naught, then you are identifying some point over here. So then the equation becomes the equation for just one characteristic. So that way when you substitute this initial condition, your general equation for all characteristic becomes the equation for just one characteristic alone. So any doubts, questions?
No, ma'am.
Okay. So is it clear compared to what you had before, compared to?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So yes, this is what is a characteristic. So this way you identify some different characteristic and you solve the ODE along each of the characteristic. So when you solve the ODE along each of the characteristic, you find the value for u of x of t comma t along that characteristic alone. When you do it for all the characteristic, you get to find the solution for you in the whole of this plane, xt plane, because the characteristics are everywhere. Though I have identified some discrete points over here, the characteristics are like they are everywhere. If you zoom this region, I can still draw more, I can still identify some other point and draw some characteristic. So that way it's all completely spread, characteristics are completely spread in the xt plane, and when you solve the PD along a single characteristic, and when you proceed this process for all the characteristics, you get to solve u of x, you get to find the value for u along the whole xt plane. So that way you're solving the whole PDE. So yes, so and we have studied characteristics for different types of 1D scalar conservation laws. So we have seen advection equation, nonlinear advection equation, and we have seen many different types of equations, right? So based on this concept, we have studied how to solve different types of 1D scalar conservation laws. Then we took some specific example, which is the Invisit-Burgess equation. And then for this equation, we studied the formation of shock and expansion waves, which is basic. So yeah. So this is your 1D scalar conservation law, which is dou u by dou t plus dou phi by dou x equals 0. For this scalar conservation law, this is the domain. U belongs to R is the range, and your x and t, x belongs to minus infinity comma infinity, and t belongs to 0 comma infinity is the domain. So all this we have seen. Okay. Now an example of this is the Invisit-Burgess equation, wherein if you put phi equals half u squared, we get this equation, dou u by dou t plus u dou u by dou x equals 0. So now for this equation, again we can, this equation also is we have studied the formation of characteristics and solution along characteristics for full 1D scalar conservation law. So since this Unicev-Burgess equation is an example of 1D scalar conservation law, we can do the same here again. So, which is this, like you have the differential equation along the characteristic alone, and then you compare 1 and 2. So you have du by dt equals 0 along dx by dt equals u. So, but your u is a dependent variable, right? U is a function of both x and t. So, however, along the characteristic du by dt equals 0. Since u is a function of both x and t, we cannot fully solve this equation. But since du by dt equals 0, we know that along the characteristic u is going to remain constant. So that way, this u being u of x of t x comma t becomes u of x of t comma t, and that is u naught of x naught. That is, we identified a characteristic, right, earlier. So, well, so let's just look at this characteristic alone. For this, we have x of t comma t. This is some point, and at this point we have x of t comma t. So now this is the x naught that we have identified. So at this x naught, this is the initial condition, right? So your u naught will be specified at this point. So you will have some u naught at this x naught. This will be u of, this is equal to u of x of 0 comma 0. So since along this line you have the same function u naught of x naught, even at this point u of x of t comma, even at this point x of t comma t, your u will be u naught of x naught only. So because along this characteristic your u naught is constant, and it is the same constant. So since since you have du by dt equals 0, your u is constant along the characteristic. So along this curve, your u is going to remain constant. So if you have some u over here, the same u will remain over here, and the same will be the value over here, and the same is the value over here, which is the initial point. So you know the value of u at the initial point at t equals 0, which is u naught of x naught. So that will be the value for you at this point, x of t comma t, which is the point where you want to find the solution. So that way you are able to find the solution at any point along the characteristic. For any random point along the characteristic, the value of u remains the same as it had been for the initial time, t equals 0. So using that, we are able to say that u of x of t comma t equals u naught of x naught along dx by dt equals u naught of x naught. So now since u naught of x naught is only a function of x naught and it's not a function of t anymore, you can just integrate. You can just write x equals u naught of x naught into t plus some constant x naught. That constant is the initial point itself. So now we have seen what characteristics are, and we have seen Unicev-Burgess equation as an example for 1D scalar conservation law. Now your initial condition can be anything, right? U naught of x, which is for the Invisig-Burgess equation, you can have any initial condition. U of x comma 0 equals u naught of x naught. Depending on this initial point, wherever you start, this function can be anything. So however, you I write some specific form of initial condition. Say you identify some point A, and you just, this is some general initial condition. Okay, when you write this initial condition, it becomes the Riemann problem. For this, for any equation, when you write such an initial condition which is discontinuous, it becomes the Riemann problem. That is, you identify some point, and to the left of the point you assign a different value, and to the right you assign a different value. That way the curve becomes discontinuous. That is discontinuous in the sense the derivative, that is dou by dou x of u naught, does not exist at x equals a. Because of this discontinuity, we resorted to weak solution. Since the initial condition itself was discontinuous, we went to weak solution because we cannot find a classical solution for this. There cannot exist a classical solution for this, basically. So we went to weak solutions. That way, yes, when UL is less than UR, you had some initial profile like this. For this, we saw the possibility of having an expansion wave solution and shock wave solution. However, this shock wave solution resulted in some contradiction, and also it did not satisfy the entropy condition. All this we have seen in the previous classes. So this is not an this shock wave solution is not an entropy wave solution for Invisig-Burgess equation when UL is less than UR. On the other hand, your expansion wave solution is an entropy solution when UL is less than UR. Similarly, when UL was greater than UR, we found shock wave solutions using RH conditions, Rankine-Hugoniot conditions. We found the speed of the shock, and this is an entropy solution when UL is less than UR, UL is greater than UR. So I've just drawn the solution profiles here at some time t greater than 0. This is the profile at t equals 0, and this turns out to be something at t greater than, something like this at t greater than 0. So when we move over from the initial condition, when you start evolving over time, you get some profile like this. Your wave starts expanding. So this is your expansion wave. So here u is continuous, however dou u by dou x does not exist at these 2 points. I mean, dou u by dou u is continuous, dou u by dou x exists everywhere, but dou u by dou x is not continuous at these 2 points, x1 and x2, for this expansion wave solution. For the shock wave solution, a profile which was something like this. This was our initial condition, right? This was the profile for u at t equals 0. For any time t greater than 0, it turned out to be something like this. That is, the shock will start moving with some velocity. So that velocity we found through Rankine-Hugoniot conditions, isn't it? So now the shock is moving. It has moved to some new position x1. That is, from the position A, it has moved to some other position x1. Here again, u is not continuous at x1 because there's a jump discontinuity, and so dou u by dou x does not exist at this point x1. So because of this reason, both expansion and shock wave solutions are not classical solutions in this domain. That is, in whole x belongs to minus infinity to infinity and t belongs to 0 comma infinity. In the whole domain, expansion wave solution is not a classical solution. However, when you fix some t equals t1 greater than 0, you get some profile like this. For different t, you will have a different profile. That is, this slope of this line will be different. It will keep expanding over time. So the slope will be changing over time. So you fix some time and then you fix some picture. That is, you have some one specific slope, and for that, with respect to that picture, you can write these limits. That is, you can separate, right, from x belonging to minus infinity to x1, and x belonging to x1 to x2, and x belonging to x2 to infinity. So this x1 and x2 will keep changing over time. So that is why we need to fix some t1. So in these different split domains, that is, in this domain split up, in this domain split up, in this domain split up, um, your u is continuous, dou u by dou x exists, and dou u by dou x is continuous as well in each of these domains separately. So it's a piecewise classical solution. So and it's not a classical solution in the full domain, but it's a piecewise classical solution, and it's obviously a weak solution. Yeah. Similarly, you can split your shock wave solution also in the same manner. You fix some time because this x1 will keep changing because your shock is moving over time. With respect to time, it keeps moving. So this x1 will change. So you fix some t1 and then you split the domain based on x1. That is x belonging to minus infinity comma x1 and x belonging to x1 comma infinity. You split the domain into two parts, and in those two domains your u is continuous, dou u by dou x exists, and dou u by dou x is continuous. So it's a classical solution in the split up domains. So it's a piecewise classical solution again. Here again, you have a weak solution. Okay. However, although it's a discontinuity mathematically, physically, there is some slight variation with grade slope inside this region. Okay. Inside this small region, this is not just one single point x1. You have 2 points, and in those, like, you have 2 different points, and between those 2 points your variable is experiencing a greater change within the small domain. So the slope is high over there. Physically it seems it's continuous, okay? However, your derivative is not continuous. Any doubts? Doubts?
No.
Okay. So yes. So this is some inference from whatever we have seen. So any like your problem is something which is a combination of both PDE and initial condition. So some problems need not have classical solution at all. So yes, because even when your initial condition itself is discontinuous, you will move only towards weak solutions. So some type of problems need not have a classical solution at all. You'll have weak solutions and you'll have some entropy solutions which are physically relevant. You won't be able to find a classical solution at all. And I wanted to emphasize this point, so that is why I went through this whole thing of Riemann problem. And then your concepts like we extended these concepts again to systems of conservation laws. From scalar conservation law, we moved to system of conservation laws, and we extended all of these to even systems. It is for scalar conservation law, your u belong to just real numbers. That is r power 1. It's just r power 1. And in that, your Invisig-Burgess equation was an example. Next, we extended this to systems where your u vector belonged to r power p and your p is greater than 1. So now, moving to systems. So this is some general equation, general system of PDEs. which is dou by dou t of u vector plus, this is what we usually see in all of our previous classes. So here this is summation j equals 1 to d. D represents the dimension, and dou by dou xj of fj vector of u vector. I have written this in different dimensions just to have some clarity. So in 1D, this equation will be something like this. That is, you will have the conserved variable vector and your flux is only in one direction, that is in x direction. Whereas in 3D, your flux is in three directions. In 2D, you will have it only in two directions. You will have just this part. So now, similar to what happened in scalar conservation laws, we are writing this dou f vector by dou x as dou f vector by dou u vector into dou u vector by dou x. The same goes in all the cases, even for 3D. Even for multi-dimensions, we write something like this. Okay, dou f, we just put a summation instead of writing things separately. And we say that j runs from 1 to d. That's it. So this is some general system of conservation laws. And here again, these system of conservation laws with some initial condition when it's a well-defined problem, because not all initial conditions will lead to proper solutions. First of all, some initial conditions may have no solution at all. Some problems may have no solution at all, because the problem when the problem is ill posed, it may not have any solution at all. So when the problem is well defined, that is, your problem is well posed, then you may or may not have a classical solution, but you will surely have entropy solutions. That is, you will surely have physically relevant solutions, but you may not have classical solution. And also, I wanted to emphasize this, that is entropy function. We saw entropy function, right? Entropy function is something like any function u of u vector that satisfies this thing, that is u double prime of u dot fj prime of u must be symmetric for all j's. J's are these, right? f1, f2, f3. When you, for 3 dimensions, you will have 3 fluxes, 3 flux vectors, f1 vector, f2 vector and f3 vector. For all of those, this property must be satisfied. U double prime of u dot f prime of u must be symmetric. So for 3D, you will have 3 equations. This will turn out into something like 3 equations. f1 prime of u, we will have f2 prime of u. Similarly, f3 prime. Instead of this, you will have f3 prime of u. So all of these 3 matrices must be symmetric for 3-dimensional case. Then then the function u that you have taken is known as the entropy function. If this property gets satisfied, then your function u is known as the entropy function. So for a system, you can find many entropy functions. It may not be unique for a system of some conservation laws. So if we fix some u vector, and if we fix some u vector, f vector and all, that we get a system, right? For that system, your entropy function need not be unique. You can have multiple entropy functions. So then we moved on to saying what are entropy solutions. For identifying the entropy solutions, that is the physically relevant solutions, we took something known as the epsilon viscous PDE. That is, we added this diffusion term to the original system of PDEs. Epsilon into Laplacian of u vector. So since this is a and we are adding a positive diffusion, that is epsilon is greater than 0, and this solution has this PDE has some classical solutions, and as epsilon approaches 0, u vector epsilon approaches u almost everywhere, which means all classical solutions of this epsilon viscous system approach the weak solutions of original system of PDEs. It is when epsilon goes to 0. All the classical solution of this system approach the weak solution of this system when your epsilon is going to 0. Also, weak solutions of this original system, that system of PDEs, that for this full system you may or may not have classical solution, and you may have multiple weak solutions. Okay. This classical solution will approach to some specific type of weak solutions. It won't approach to all weak solutions. This classical solutions of this system will approach to some weak solutions of this system, and those weak solutions are known as the entropy solutions for this system. I've written that over here. Weak solutions of original system of PDEs obtained from viscous system of PDEs are entropy solutions. That is, weak solution for the original system, you can have many weak solutions possible. However, from the epsilon viscous system of PDEs, you obtain some weak solutions for the original system. That is, the classical solution of this system approach the weak solution of original system, right? So those weak solutions are known as the entropy solutions, because anything with positive diffusion is considered to be physical. Like in the physical world, if things are with positive diffusion coefficient, you'll have more diffusion. So that is considered to be physical, and the entropy inequality equation derived from this system of PDEs serves as some checker for the general weak solution, because okay. So you have some epsilon viscous system of PDEs, and for this system, based on this system, we derived some entropy inequality equation. Okay. Also, any general weak solution for this original system, how will we see whether any general weak solution for the original system is an entropy solution or not? We only have to just see whether that solution, whether that weak solution satisfies the entropy inequality equation that we derived based on this. Because anything with positive diffusion is considered to be physical. So the entropy inequality equation derived from this will help us to see whether something is physical or not. If some solution satisfies the entropy inequality equation, then it means that there is an associated epsilon viscous system of PDEs with that weak solution. Okay. Okay, let's say that some weak solution of your original system of PDEs satisfies the entropy inequality equation. Then that weak solution can be obtained from the classical solution of this system of PDEs just by moving epsilon to 0. So it's a two-way thing. You have original system, and then you have epsilon viscous system. Here for the original system, you have multiple weak solutions. For the epsilon viscous system, you have some classical solutions, and these classical solutions approach some weak solutions. Among this multiple weak solutions, it only approaches some specific weak solutions. This classical solution will approach some weak solutions when epsilon goes to 0. So those are the physics. So those become the physical solutions. This is one thing. Next is based on epsilon viscous system. Based on this epsilon viscous system, we derived something known as entropy inequality. So now any solution U vector, weak solution or classical solution, whatever, weak solution itself encompasses the classical solution, so that's not an issue. So any weak solution U vector, if it satisfies this entropy inequality, then it means that uh, it is somewhere related to this epsilon viscous system. Epsilon viscous system has positive diffusion, so that is considered to be physical. So anything that so we need not go and see whether there is an epsilon viscous system of PDEs which has a positive diffusion coefficient. It is enough to just check whether your weak solution U vector satisfies this entropy inequality. So just to see whether some solution is a physical or not, you need not go back to this epsilon viscous system. It's just enough to only check with the entropy inequality. Just this part is enough. Because entropy inequality itself was obtained from epsilon viscous system. So this derivation is all over. So for any example, for any system of PDEs, if we want to check some solution is a physical solution or not, then it's sufficient to go only with entropy inequality. So is it clear? Any doubts? Any doubts?
No, ma'am.
Okay. So this is known as a system of conservation law, and we have seen some weak solutions, classical solutions and entropy solutions for a system. Now let's just see some specific systems of conservation laws encountered in physics. So we have conservation of mass, dou rho by dou t plus we have three fluxes, right? For 3 dimensions. And then we have the conservation of momentum and conservation of energy. I guess you will be familiar with these things. For conservation of mass is just one equation in rho. Rho is the conserved variable, and rho u1, rho u2 and rho u3 are the fluxes in x1, x2 and x3 directions. Okay, that is what can be inferred from this equation. Next is the momentum equation, which is in which rho ui is the conserved variable. That is, this equation itself, in this equation, you have an index I, which is the free index. That is, I belongs to 1, 2, 3. This equation can be split up and written as 3 separate equations for different values of I. That is 1, 2 and 3. So this can be split up into 3 equations. So here rho ui is the conserved variable, and this whole thing, that is, this is the flux variable in x1, x2 and x3 directions. So this is the stress tensor, and this is the shear stress tensor, and here we have the normal stress tensor, and we have the convection part. Next is the conservation of energy. Here rho e is the conserved variable, and this full thing is the flux. Here again, this is the shear stress part, this is the heat diffusion part, and this is the convection part. And we have some constitutive equations, right? For tau ij can be written as something like this. So yeah, when indices are repeated, it is when you write something as ui tau ij, that is, in this case I is repeated, right? When an index is repeated twice, it means that we are summing over that index. This is Einstein's summation convention. The same thing is happening over here as well. That is, you have dou uk by dou xk. That actually means that you're summing over k, which is divergence of u vector in the vector notation. I mean, this is initial notation, this is vector notation for the same thing. So you have some constitutive equation for tau and q, when E can be, E here is written as internal energy and kinetic energy part separately. And we have used ideal gas equation of state. So now, we can substitute all of these inside each of these equations, and then we can make these equations. If we do that, then in these three equations, the only variables will be rho, ui, and p. Let's say we'll either have p or p, whatever we want, right? We can choose p. These will be the variables, and gamma and r will be constants. Also k, mu, everything. All of these will be constants. Okay. So now we can write just these three equations after substituting these variables as one system. So now I'm writing, this is that system, okay? This is, I'm writing it in 3 dimensions. So you have 5 equations, rho, u. So this is your conserved variable vector. In your general system, if you compare it with general system, this is your u vector. Your u vector is written as this. And I've written the fluxes. These are the fluxes. F1 vector. This is the F1 vector. So this vector is F1 vector of u vector, and this is F2 vector of u vector, and this is F3 vector of u vector. In CFD, this full system is usually known as the Navier-Stokes system of equations. Although in fluid mechanics, we just call the conservation of momentum part with this constitutive equation, that is with the Newtonian fluid assumption, we call that alone, that conservation of momentum equation with this assumption as the Navier-Stokes equations. In CFD, it's a tendency to call the full system of equations as the Navier-Stokes equations, and without this viscous and heat diffusion terms, that with this tau and q's removed, then this same system becomes the Euler's system, that is the full system of equations again. So the same equation in 2D, one more thing to be noted, this is u vector, and here we have 5 components. So u vector belongs to Rp, where p equals 5, and we have 3 dimensions. We have 3 fluxes in 3 directions, that is in x1, x2 and x3. So our dimension is 3. So in 2 dimensions, we have only fluxes in 2 directions, and your u vector is in R4 now. So P equals 4. The same equation has been written. In 1 dimension, your u vector is in R3, and your flux is just in x1 direction. So something to be noted. Now each of these is a system of conservation law. Each of these is an example for something that we have seen earlier. Now all of these will fall under this category, right? All the 3 systems will fall under this category only. So all the theory that we have developed for this system of conservation laws will hold now for all of these systems that we encounter in physics. So we can develop entropy functions. We can find entropy inequality for each of these systems. So for Navier-Stokes system, although for the general system I told that the entropy functions need not be unique. That is something that satisfies this is the entropy function, right? So many functions can satisfy this property, and many functions can turn out to be entropy functions. But for Navier-Stokes equation, it turns out that there is only one entropy function possible. and that is the physical entropy itself, that is minus rho s. This function satisfies this property and it turns out to be the only possible entropy function. For Euler system, we can have multiple entropy functions. Without the viscosity and the heat diffusion terms, we can have multiple entropy functions. Now, yeah, these are certain things I wanted to emphasize. Next, in the last class, we saw two different systems of PDs, that is decoupled and coupled systems. Like we converted a coupled system into a decoupled system and we solved, right? Now we'll just, but I did not emphasize, I did not say exactly what coupled and decoupled systems are. Here, the motive is to just make it clear what decoupled and coupled systems are. So now let's just consider some 1D system. So you have some system like this, just one dimensional, that is your flux is in only one direction and you have some conserved variable vector. So here again you can just write dou f1 vector by dou u vector, which is a matrix, okay? I mean, this matrix is dou f1 vector by dou u vector. So since your u vector belongs to just R3, and if I take that assumption, then your u vector is this and your dou f vector by dou u vector is this one. So basically this system of PDEs in expanded form is written as this equation, this matrix equation. So now if you just from this matrix equation, if you just try to write out each equation separately, then you'll have some individual equation in for each of these, right? So it will become dou by dou t of u1 plus you multiply this and this. So you have dou f1 by dou u1 into dou u1 by dou x1, dou f1 by dou u2 into dou u2 by dou x1, and this into this. So similarly, you will have three such equations. When you do that, each of these is a conservation law. Okay, u1, u2, and u3 are the conserved variables in each of these equations. That is, in the first equation, u1 is the conserved variable, and the second equation, u2 is the conserved variable, and in the third, u3 is the conserved variable. However, in this equation, your flux is not just in u1, it's also in u2 and u3. So for getting u1 as the output, it's required for us to put all three, u1, u2, and u3 as inputs. Similarly, in the next equation as well, all u1, u2, and u3 are required as inputs, just to get one of the variables as output. So this is a coupled system. On the other hand, if this matrix is diagonal, then your A here is dou f1 by dou u1 and B is dou f2 by dou u2, C is dou f3 by dou u3. Okay, it's they need not be functions of, they need not be just constants. Okay, they can be some functions as well. So if this matrix is diagonal, then now when you write each of these equations separately from this matrix equation, you'll have three such equations wherein you'll have dou by dou t of u1 plus a into dou by dou x of u1 equals 0. You won't, in this equation you won't have, because since we have 0 and 0 over here, these two quantities will not have any effect. That is, dou by dou x of u2 and dou by dou x of u3 won't have any effect in the first equation. Similarly, the second equation will only be in u2 and third equation will only be in u3. So now each of these equations are independent. They are so u1 from here doesn't go as input to the second equation or third equation. So each of these are independent. So now this system is decoupled. And we also have seen how to solve such kind of systems, right? In the scalar conservation law, we know how to solve, based on the theory developed for scalar conservation law, we know how to solve each of these systems separately. So if it's possible for us to convert this system, this matrix into a diagonal matrix somehow, then it's always easy for us to solve this full system of PDEs based on the theory developed for 1D scalar, not just 1D, any general scalar conservation laws. So, any doubts?
No, ma'am.
Okay. So, yeah, I wanted to make things clear in this lecture because last time I thought I found that some clarity was missing. So, this lecture, the motive of this lecture is to just enhance the clarity of whatever we have seen before. So, yes, last time what we have done was, I'll just reiterate what we did last time as well. We just converted the system of PDEs into some scalar equations. That is, we moved from a coupled system to a decoupled system through some properties of the matrix. I mean, we converted that full matrix into a diagonal matrix based on some properties, and then we solved the decoupled system, and then we moved from those solutions to the solutions for the full system. And it's not always possible to convert this matrix into a diagonal matrix. It's only possible when you have, eigenvalue decomposition is possible, but eigenvalue decomposition is not actually, eigenvalue is just one word. We cannot write it as two separate words. So it's possible only when you have, for a matrix, only when you have linearly independent eigenvectors. It's possible for you to find some, let's just say this matrix is A. If you arrange this matrix, if you arrange the eigenvectors of the matrix, I mean, each of these columns must be eigenvectors. This P1 is one eigenvector, P2 is some eigenvector, and so on. Then you can write P inverse AP as some diagonal matrix. So this will become some diagonal matrix whose diagonal elements are eigenvalues, and apart from that everything will be 0 here. Some lambda 1. So it's possible when you have linearly independent eigenvectors, because inverse cannot exist, right? P inverse will exist only when all the rows or columns in the matrix are linearly independent. If they are not linearly independent, P inverse won't exist. So now we have seen this for just a matrix in which all the elements are constant. I mean, for this, last time we have developed that eigenvalue decomposition thing for a matrix in which all of these elements are constants. Next, but for our physical system, that is Euler's or Navier-Stokes system, this matrix will not be constant. That will be a function of u itself. So we'll see what happens in that system. Okay. I mean, last time we told, right? We've stopped over here. We'll see it in the next class, I guess. Yeah. So we'll stop here now. Any questions? questions?
No, ma'am.
So fine, we'll stop here. We'll meet in the next week. Are the doubts cleared? I mean, are the contents clear now compared to what it was before?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Got some clarity with today's session also.
Okay, fine. So yes, once in a while, I think it's required to have a session solely for summary alone, something like this. I think with just asking questions, it may not be clear. So we'll stop here and meet in the next week.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Okay.